I guess let's start with the traditional school, and we talk about these things that seem to like absolutely crush curiosity, that punish you for exercising like autonomy or agency, or dare you say sovereignty, right? Like you are, there is very much a hierarchy, and you try to instill to the kids like you are at the bottom of the
Mm,
totem pole. So much so that like you can't even honor your body if you have to go to the bathroom. Like you can have a teacher tell you, no, you have to wait, which is insane to me. And some people might think that I'm being like over dramatic and all of these little things don't really mean something, but I firmly believe, and I will die on this hill, that nothing is by accident. All of this stuff was put into place for a very specific reason. And you can go into the history of education, and it goes like pre-industrial era, right? Like, so
mhm,
we kind of took that from the Prussians, and what did the Prussians
mhm,
develop education for? It was to create good subordinate citizens for a dictatorship. So,
mhm,
and then we obviously took that, added capitalism to that, which I love capitalism. I'm not saying like I'm anything but like it was to make really good factory workers so that
mhm,
bottom line was big and shareholders had their profits and yada yada. So that was the world that was operating then. Fast forward 200-300 years, here we are today, and we're living in a gig economy. We're living in a place where there's now a job called AI whisperer, which didn't exist a year ago, right? So why are we using a model that was originated to create a good citizen and then a good factory worker when all of that seems pretty obsolete? And I think that a lot of people have this movement of like of finding your autonomy and finding your sovereignty and your power, and all of these little things do matter to a young developing brain because they are a sponge. So if you put them in this place
mhm,
for 8 hours a day 5 days a week, where they are being told, don't honor your body or your body's knowing, don't challenge authority, don't ask me why, just listen, this is wrong, this is wrong. Even if you get to the right answer, which is my experience a lot, if you were doing a math equation and you didn't do it exactly how they wanted, even if the answer was right, they're like, well, you're still losing points. And you're like, this doesn't make any bit of sense. So it absolutely needs to be, I think, just like torn down and rebuilt. But I
mhm,
don't know how that even happens because we're
mhm,
forced to pay a tax to perpetuate a bad product that
mhm,
has bad outcomes. And you look
mhm,
across the globe, and if you look more like the Danish models, their kids don't even start going to school till they're 7, right? Like, so
mhm,
this whole idea that you have to be able to read and write and all of these things, it
mhm,
seems like an immense amount of pressure for
mhm,
what? Like, these are the years that you are supposed to be creative and curious
mhm,
and play and fantasy and all of those things,
mhm.
and test wild theories, and not constantly be told that you're wrong or not good enough or that's crazy, that's stupid, that won't work. I mean, if you were to look at someone like Elon and say he wants to go and like have colonies on Mars, like, you would be like, "Absolutely not," but try to tell
Go to
that
the
man
corner.
no, right? Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Oh, you get it, Candice. Like everything you said, that's exactly the things that I talk about. Those are exactly the questions that I have, and what I've been going crazy over the past years, trying to figure out, why. And I don't think I have a clear cut answer, but if you look at all the other industries, they've all, most of them keep, innovating and evolving with our needs, right? But like you very well said, education, we continue to use a model that was created 200 years ago. Yes, it's been tweaked a little bit here, a little bit there. In past years, we've added a little bit of technology here, but the outcomes are pretty much the same. And I would even argue that we've made things even worse, since the 1960s, where we started adding all this standardized tests in order to measure learning, which originally were intended to have sort of a baseline, but then ended up just becoming the whole point of education, to the point where everything revolves around these tests, and the kids sort of miss the point of learning. Like they think they're learning to pass a test because they are, and that's how they enter gifted programs. That's how they go into remediation groups. That's how they pass grade levels. Teachers are held accountable based on the results of their students. Schools compete against each other, nations compete against each other. Like everything revolves around this test, and that has really made things worse, because if kids did not have time before or teachers, to teach the things that that are not in the curriculum but that we know that matter more. Now is even worse. Now everything, basically everything is test prep from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. The people that create the curriculums are the same people creating the tests, so you're basically teaching for this test. And when you look at the content that we're assessing them on, you start to realize that a lot of it is not even relevant to the jobs that people are having nowadays, like not even for
Mhm.
like engineering jobs, or like all this knowledge that we're making kids cram, and it's so irrelevant. And so the problem is that we know, because research shows that kids and adults and anybody that wants to learn something needs to understand the purpose behind what they're learning. Otherwise, it's going to go in one ear and out the other ear, or after the test, you're going to forget. We also know that knowledge decays really quickly, right? So if you do not put to actual practice in the next 14 days what you're learning, you're going to forget. And kids can't put to practice a lot of the things that they are learning in school. So it just becomes a big waste of time. And what you're seeing is a lot of kids, and it's very tragic, graduating from high school without an idea of what they're really good at, what they love doing, what are their strengths, what they want to spend the next few years doing, and even worse than that, we've been watering down things so much, and trying to, we think that we can't expose them to complexity as much, or we think that we need to figure everything out for them, we don't let them struggle, and then we kind of deprive them from a lot of the things that they're going to face as adults in the future. And then when they're 18, we sort of like release them into the world, and we're like, oh, be independent. But we've never taught them to be independent, because we made them be codependent for 18 years while they were under our, in the school settings. We asked them to, oh, you need to know what to do when failure comes your way. But we never taught them how to do that. Kids didn't want to fail in school because they know they would get a bad grade and get punished, and that would go on their record. So dare them, like, of course, they're not going to take risks or brace failure. But then when they become adults, if you look at all the people that are really successful and happy out there and doing wonderful things for humanity, they fail constantly, but they know how to pick themselves up. They know how to learn from their mistakes, and they know what to do, and they keep going. They have that attitude of, oh, this is just another obstacle in the way. I mean, look at Elon. Like, that's sort of his whole mantra. But yet we're not teaching kids this in school. And so like that, there are a bunch of things like, oh, we're like, oh, we need to challenge the status quo and we need to do this. But yet in school, we're teaching kids to adhere to authority and never question anything and not think for themselves. And everyone, there's a right way to do things. This is the way you think. If everyone agrees on an idea, then it must be true. And so then, again, we're churning out all these kids into the real world, and we expect them, or they're faced with the reality that the whole world, it's like, it's very different from what we're teaching them in school. And then, of course, we're setting them up for failure, right? And so, back to your question, like, why are we still doing this? I think
Mhm.
that, and again, I don't have a clear cut answer, but I think that when you try to standardize a process like learning, that in order to do it at a mass level, right? And try to educate a whole population and do, of course, the idea behind it originally was good, right? Like, you wanted to educate a population. The problem is that you can't really do that when it comes to learning, because like you said, we all mature at different rates. We learn differently. We're interested in different things, and the interest component and the curiosity component is key in order to learn. And so, when you try to standardize a process like learning and try to make everyone go through the same thing and have this common core standards that we need to adhere to, and you have this assessments that we assess everyone the same way, you miss the point of learning. It's kind of like we're so focused on all this like order and structures and this and that we miss the most important things, right? And so that's why I think that the system doesn't work, and there's nothing we can do to make it work. So people ask me, and I have like interviews and reporters like, Anna, like, what are the things that 5 things you would do to fix the system? Like, and I'm like, I don't have answers. I left because I didn't see a way to fix it. I don't think it's about reforming this old structure. I think we need to, like you said, transform it. We need to start from zero. I have in the background, it says like rethinking education from first principles. That's like, what my whole book is about. That's what Synthesis is about, which is the school that I'm part of. That, Elon was like, we need to rethink education from first principles. What should kids be learning nowadays? Like, what's the best way to teach them? It's not giving them content, right? You give them a problem, they're going to face things, they're going to need information, they're going to need tools, they're going to need resources. That's when you introduce them to that. And so I think that we need something parallel. I don't think the traditional school system is going to go anywhere, because it serves as a babysitting center for a lot of people. Like, the reality for most parents is that they have to drop their kids off some more quote unquote safe, because as we've seen in the past years, that's no longer the case for many schools. But they have to drop their kids somewhere so that they can go to work. And a lot of parents just they think that the only option other than school is homeschooling, which is not true. There's a whole range of options in the middle between homeschooling and traditional school. But anyway, I think that for now, the alternative education options, we're still growing this space, and we still need the physical spaces to drop kids off with facilitators where they can be learning their own thing, but so that parents can actually go to work. So I think that the school system's not going to go anywhere. Also, it's one of those things that has been around for so long and that so many people just blindly trust, and they just go through the motions because they think, hey, I mean, I turned out fine. So it's not the end of the world. It seems very complicated to take this upon myself right now. I have already all these things in my plate. I'm just going to send my kids to school and that's it. They'll be fine. Like, they're not dying. They're fine. But it's like, fine is not good enough, right? Like, kids are
Yep.
the inventors and the explorers of our future. Like, they deserve the best kind of education that they need, that they could receive. And so I think that what will happen is the alternative education space will continue to grow and the options will continue to expand. And we are sort of getting to a point where parents will have the ability to pick and choose from sort of like a menu of options and say,
Mhm.
okay, this is what works for my family, for my kids. And by the way, it may look very different from one kid to the other, right? Because,
Mhm.
like we said, every kid is different. And so, again, we're not quite there yet. It is doable, but it requires a lot of effort from the parent side. So a lot of people are not willing to do that. And so, again, not a clear cut answer, but that's sort of where I stand after digging into the history of education, the way things are, and sort of why we're stuck where we're stuck.